You're listening to Big Blend Radio's English Connection Show with Glynn Burrows, owner of Norfolk Tours. Welcome, everyone. It is time to go over the pond to England to talk about Dublin. That's what we do here on Big Blend Radio. But Glynn Burrows, the owner of Norfolk Tours, takes his guests all over the British Isles, whether it's England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. So Dublin is it. I know you were recently there, Glynn, and I have to tell you, he's got a great article. It's listed and linked in the episode notes. And when I got all excited because I've done interviews with travel writers about Dublin. And of course, there's really, we all know about Guinness. And of course, we all want to go to Guinness. I do, for sure. There's all these different things that we really know about Dublin. But I think you dug into some really just amazing historical sites. And especially if your ancestry is connected with Dublin, this is definitely a podcast episode you're going to want to listen to, unless we get detoured and derail off topic, which sometimes happens, right, Glynn?
No, we never do that. Never.
But welcome back. How have you been? And you just came back from Glasgow, so you're like venturing all over.
I am.
Great.
I'm all over the place. Yeah, I'm all over the place just lately. But I will just point out to you and your listeners that Dublin is in Éire, which is Southern Ireland. Northern Ireland is part of the British Isles or part of the United Kingdom.
Okay.
But Ireland, Éire, is not part of the British Isles. It's a separate country. So
okay.
Southern Ireland, which is where Dublin is for me a foreign country. I found that really strange that I went to Ireland and I was using euros because they're still part of the EU. And also I needed my passport because I was going to a foreign country. But
wow.
I did fly, but it just felt funny that I was going to Ireland and that was a foreign country because it didn't feel like a foreign country.
And you flew there?
Yeah, I flew from Stansted, which is one of my local airports.
Okay. So near Norwich then?
It's near Cambridge.
Oh, okay. So flew over there. How long does it take to do that kind of flight?
About an hour and a half. It's not long.
Oh, okay. Quick. Okay. All right.
Quite a nice flight.
Because I'm used to you taking trains or driving,
Yeah, I mean, to Glasgow, I took a train.
Okay.
Because that's on the same, we're still on the same mainland, but Ireland is actually across the sea. So, you either go by ferry or you fly, and ferry would take a long while because you have to drive all the way across the other side of the country, which is about 6 hours to cross our country.
Wow. So, but Glynn, what Glynn is politely trying to tell me is to look at a map.
Well, no. It's just the thing that I always get the difficulty with when I'm thinking about North America and Canada, obviously I include in North America, is the fact that your distances are so great. I can drive from the east coast of Great Britain to the west coast of Wales in 5.5, 6 hours. That's across the entire country.
Wow. Well, it's so weird because we just drove from Eugene, Oregon to Lubbock, Texas, where we are. And without stopping, it is a 27-hour drive. And Nancy and I just did it flat out with a few stops. And I'm actually sitting upright today, which is, by the time we got here, I was out because it's a long drive and through different terrain and through desert, mountain, we didn't see the ocean, but we did, see a little bit of the Colorado River in one area. So, I mean, it's just, it's pretty mind blowing to go that long of a distance. And when you say 6 hours, I'm like, 6 hours is like nothing to me unless I'm walking it. But 6 hours is just around the corner. Now, most people may not say that, but the amount of driving that Nancy and I do across the country, it's a 6-hour drive. That's nothing. I can do that in my sleep. Not really, but don't do that. So but you know what I mean? So that's, accessible for people. And I think that's what also makes your area such a destination for folks is that everything is, you don't have to go too far to experience such history and nature and and all
Right,
that
exactly.
wonderful,
I mean,
things, but
like I said, I was in Glasgow last weekend, and that is only, what, a 5-hour rail trip,
yeah, yeah,
that's from England all the way up to Glasgow.
and
You know,
Glasgow's
I mean,
magic.
and we've got everything really within easy driving or train distance. So
Mm,
if you wanna organise a train trip, you can do that so easily because our trains are really good.
mm,
So you can get a train to lots of
mm,
places, so that's
mm.
it.
But Dublin, you're gonna fly.
Yeah,
And so Dublin, but this, and I think a lot of the travel writers that have been to Dublin, they were doing it as part of a cruise that goes
yeah,
up, and then
yeah,
they go to the Shetland Islands and
yeah,
then
yeah,
go to, Iceland, I think, from there, as
yeah,
I recall.
yeah. I mean,
So
a lot of cruises now, you can actually get cruises all the way around the British Isles, and obviously Dublin is one of the places that they call in at because it
mhm,
is so, archetypal Irish with the
mm,
Jamesons and the Guinness factory, and everything else that's associated with Dublin. And,
mm,
it is a lovely, lovely I was
mm.
really, really taken with Dublin because it's a friendly place. It's very easy to walk about in Dublin. It's not one of these cities where you sort of have to keep hold of your wallet. Well, you do obviously, but you know what I mean. You don't feel exposed in Dublin. People feel friendly, and it was just a lovely place to visit.
Well,
Oh
I
yeah,
hope I don't feel exposed in a city. I had to do that, sorry, Glenn. But you're talking about even the cruise ships and it's being, a port. So
yeah.
one of the places you went to was this historic ship. Tell everybody about this historic ship because
Oh
we've talked about ships for years, but it never gets old and there's always a new one to go and
yeah,
a new old one, old lady to
yeah.
go visit.
Well, this one is really, really lovely. It's the Jeannie Johnston, and it's a replica of a mid-19th century ship that was used to sail from Ireland to America. So it did the regular North Atlantic crossing, and the the claim to fame of the Jeannie Johnston is it never lost a passenger. So none of its passengers across the Atlantic, nobody ever died on the Jeannie Johnston
Wow.
because not only did the person who owned it have very high standards, he actually employed a doctor to go on the ship across the Atlantic to look after the people
That's
who were
smart.
absolutely. And they said that, not that is the only ship, I think they were saying when we had a look around it, the only ship that actually didn't ever lose a passenger ever. So that fanta
So
and it
did it do more than one voyage across
oh, yeah.
because
It was going
okay.
backwards and forwards all the time, it was that's what they used to do. They used to take people from one side, from Ireland over to America, then they would bring things back, like,
Mm,
tobacco or whatever else.
okay.
So it would be going backwards and forwards.
Mm,
But the interesting thing is that you can actually get an idea of the conditions on board. You can get an idea about what it was like to actually go across the Atlantic in a ship. And the size of the ship is quite surprising. It's quite small when look at talking about cruise liners,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
massive things. These ships are quite small, and
Mm.
when you consider how bad the Atlantic can get, it must have been quite horrendous to go across in what was really only a little ship. So it
Wow.
was, it was really fascinating to look round and
Mm,
to see it laid out as it would have been in the 1850s.
mm.
So it's really fascinating.
I wonder why all ships have a lady's name, I
Yeah, I don't
wonder.
know. I think
Well,
it's I
hmm,
think a ship is always she.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
it's
I think the
always
ship is
I
is
think it's a
always
comfort and because, you know, we're so organized.
yeah. I think it's another thing is that they didn't like to have women on board very much. I know the Navy didn't like to have women on board. I suppose, that's pretty obvious really. If you got a
But, yeah.
a
Yeah.
ship full of men, you don't want one woman on board, do you? Because
Not a good idea.
you're
Not a
gonna
good
have fight.
idea.
But, so I think they just had the ship was the feminine thing on board the ship, so to speak.
And a nurturer, a carer, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, and respect, you know? The other thing that you did too is you went to the general post office, but, um, this is a famous post office, and this is quite a story.
Yeah.
This was a place of an uprising, right?
Yeah, this is where if we're talking about rebels, this is where the
Everyone
I
next month, just saying, rebels are
yeah.
next
Um,
month.
this is where the Easter Rising took place in 1916, when Ireland split from being part of Great Britain, because up until then, Ireland was British. And they split. So now we've got a little bit of Northern Ireland, which is still part of the United Kingdom. But as I said, Southern Ireland is a
Mhm,
separate country. And that more or less all happened around 1916 with the Easter Rising.
mhm,
Because there was, I mean, I didn't realize until I went to Dublin, and we were talking to different people and different, the castle and the ship, especially with the bloke who was talking on the ship was really good with history.
mhm,
Um, and I didn't realize what nasty people the British were to the Irish, and how we treated them, and how we really put them down. You know,
mhm.
we sort of did away with their language and their customs, and so they rebelled. They
And
rebelled.
when they came over to America, they were really used. That's, slaves, African
Yeah,
American slaves, they were brought over without wanting to come here.
yeah,
The Irish were trying to escape, get over here, and treated almost as bad as slaves. And that's something that we forget about in this country. And we've actually done a
exactly.
show with it with Mike Wardia, you know him. And when you look at the conditions and the mining, they did a lot of the mining and the worst conditions. And even the Eastern Europeans that came to this country, I'm doing a lot, as you know, on the
Yeah,
historic Jefferson Highway that goes from Winnipeg, Canada to New Orleans, Louisiana. We've been doing a lot of shows on the mining times in Kansas. And I didn't
yeah,
even know there was mining in Kansas, but I'm learning a whole bunch. And we did a show talking about rebels and uprising, the women up at an uprising. And they were mostly Eastern European, and they were called the Amazon Army. And they rose up with pots and pans in the streets, banging for justice and health care and a raise in wages for their sons, their husbands, their brothers, their cousins, the men. And because little boys were working in the mines and there was soot everywhere. This was all coal mining. And
yeah,
they were living in like tent cities, basically. And it can get really brutal in winter. So these kind of little cabins that they had to use newspaper on the walls and to really kind of shutter it. And what they got advertising went over from the States by these mining people would do advertisements over into Eastern Europe. And I don't know if it happened in Ireland too, saying the streets are paved in gold.
yeah, yeah.
And so everybody flocks over and yeah, well, it was not easy. And so it's kind of similar, isn't it? And in a way, when we look at this history, it's connected
Yes.
also but over to England, Ireland, these same stories of greed, really, of how we used people.
Well, exactly. I mean, I know that even up until the 1950s and 60s, you would see signs on pubs and hotels and restaurants that would say, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to say, if I hope I don't offend anybody, but it would say no blacks and no Irish,
Mm,
because
yep.
that's what they had on the signs, because
It's sad.
they treated people like dirt. And I think it's very easy to not want to talk about these things because of fear of offending people, but I think that we need to talk about these things to remember that these things went on. you know So I think we need to talk about the fact that we used to
Mhm.
have a sign that said no blacks and no Irish, even though
Yeah.
it's nice. That's not what we would do today. But I think we need to talk about it so we know that even in my lifetime, it was still like that.
Yes, South Africa, hello.
Exactly.
And in South Africa, you'd go into a restaurant or like a bar, it would be no blacks, no women.
Yeah.
So let's just it's we're only now getting to learn depending on where you live, getting better depending on where you live. So some countries are going backwards and some
Yeah.
countries
Yeah.
are going forwards and some, we have women rising up, in the Middle East for their rights too. So this is going to be a show that we delve into more next month. So look at me, I'm getting us back on track, but we did go off on the East Rising. Look how good that was.
Oh,
But
good little segue across the.
yeah, yeah, but this is the truth. I mean, it's my fault, but it is connected. When you go to these places, it really and it also becomes not just words, that you hear on a TV screen or listen
Yeah.
to, or it becomes very real when you set foot in a space where something went down and something happened, or the pub that you're saying that you see that, oh my gosh, horror above horrors, this really
Yeah.
did occur,
Well,
you know?
in Ireland in the mid of the 19th century, the whole reason most Irish went from Ireland to either to England or to America was the fact that there was a famine.
Mm.
And the reason there was a famine was because of the British and the way that we treated the
Ooh.
Irish and the way that we sort of did away with a lot of their lands. And, it was all about greed again, about big landowners taking over things. And the Irish didn't have any food. So they had the choice of
Oof.
either starving to death or upping and going somewhere
Uh,
else. So that
oh
is
man.
why a lot of them left.
How does it feel for you knowing that that's part of your ancestry? How do you because I mean, obviously, us as Americans, white, somewhere something went wrong. I mean, we've also got, a lot of us have German heritage and we have to deal with Nazi history, right, in
No,
our families.
yes, yeah, I understand all of that, but it wasn't me,
Mm.
and it actually wasn't my ancestors because my ancestors were all poor, so they were all in the same boat. But at the end of the day, it was what happened, and it's exactly the same as about what I was saying about the sign on the pub. You know, we need to acknowledge that's what happened. I can't make it right. I can't apologize to those Irish people who all died. I can't apologize to them, and I can't apologize to their great 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 grandchildren because that's meaningless. But what I can do is not do it today.
Mm.
And by going over to Ireland, I mean, there's a fantastic museum right next door to the Jeannie Johnston, which is the Emigration
Oh
Museum.
yeah.
And that actually tells the story of emigration and why they all left and how they got across to America, and then a lot of them what they did when they went there. But on the quayside, one of the pictures I've sent you is an art installation of a group of people walking along the quayside. This is a bronze statues, um, in the famine, and you can see that they're literally that
Oh,
skinny
the
because
stick
they're
figure,
all
yeah.
they're all nearly dead because they couldn't eat. There was nothing to eat apart from potatoes, and the potato harvest went, so they had nothing to eat. Um, but again, the museum there really does explain what it was all about, why it happened, and how it happened, so we can learn. Hopefully, the amount of times I hear these people say we're going to learn by our mistakes, but we never seem to, do we? But hopefully, we can learn about what happened and try not to do it again. And if I don't do it again, at least I'm doing my little bit, aren't I?
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think it's so important. That's why travel brings us closer together, and it reminds us that
Absolutely.
the world is very small. I
Yeah,
mean, going across the Atlantic is not a small feat, but when you think about how connected we all are, museums really kind of put us in our place. It
they
does.
do.
Like going out into nature puts us in our place. It
Exactly.
kind of it's humbling, and it's. I just think that we get caught up in the news, and it's devastating but then we need I remember doing an interview about, equal rights in housing here
Yeah,
in this country, and
yeah,
there's all these laws, and some of them are being demolished right now, and there's, or there's just a lot of change going on, and the lady I was interviewing, Leah Rothstein, said and her father is amazing what he's done, because a lot of times, African Americans and, minority as they call minority groups, which I hate because they're not minors, they're not children. They're, wonderful people, and, if you were not the shade of white, you didn't get into live in certain areas, so it's called redlining. You go on this side, we go over here, we get the parks, you don't. We get the trees, you don't, and you don't get bank loans. And so they would cut them short at the bank loan side, and that's it. So that's where black banking, American banks started up, and it's been a really difficult thing for in this country. And anyway, her and her husband, or excuse me, her father, are very well known for how to rally communities to work together to make positive change and to empower themselves. And whenever they go to do anything, they both say this, and it's the biggest message I think is to understand what is happening now, we always have to go back in history. And
we
and
do.
I just remember this in their book, and it's everything they talk about, and I go, "It's so true," because right now people don't understand a lot of things. They go, "Well, why do these people do this? Why did they do that? Why don't they do this?" And I'm always going, "You need to go back in history so you can see the footsteps of maybe one person, one family, a community of people, of how, like, even to survive sometimes takes 2 to 3 generations to even get a footing of survival." And so I
Yeah.
think this is a very big truth of going back to with the Irish coming over to the States. It's taken time. It's not just,
Mm,
"Hey, I landed on shore and I'm perfectly happy and got money and all that." It didn't happen that way. And so for us, and our generations, we should be very grateful for those in our families who really paid the price for us to have certain freedoms that we definitely did not have in the past, depending
yes,
on your,
and
who you are and where you're from.
and I think the thing is that if we learn from what they did and how they had to live and what they put up with, then hopefully we can see what's happening around us today, and we can see how we're actually going backwards in a lot of cases. We're not moving forward in the way that we should be. We're going back to the segregation. We're going back to the them and the us, and we're going back to putting one group against another group, and it's not we've all got to just live together, you know,
We
and
have far better food that way. I'm just saying, if the more we all unite, the better food you can enjoy from around the world.
the
And
better life you can enjoy
mhm,
because you're working together in a common direction rather
mhm,
than, this side going in that direction and then this side going in that direction,
mm,
you know, or both of them going in that direction, which is what is happening in a lot of places today. It's just
around the world.
yeah, just people fighting because somebody is shaking it up. I remember a story. I was talking about this yesterday, actually, to someone. Um, there was I don't know where I saw it, a jar of black ants and red ants where they were getting on nicely. Nothing was happening. They weren't fighting against each other. They were just in a jar, black ants and red ants. Someone came along and they shook the jar, right? The red ants and the black ants then killed each other. But actually, the person or the thing that was at fault was the person who shook the jar.
Mhm.
It weren't the red ants and the black ants.
They
It was
just
the
didn't
person
they
who
were that's survival mode.
yes. So that's what's happening today in a lot of cases where, A is being put against B and they're killing each other, but actually the problem is the person who's put an A against B in the first place.
And the best way to understand that is to go to historic sites, go to
Exactly.
battlefields, which suck because it's
Yeah.
sad. But I think sometimes this is our wake up call. In South Africa, we used
Exactly.
to call it catch a fat wake up. And when
And
I think
yeah,
it just like you going in to the immigration museum, going
yeah,
to see the ship, going to the site of the uprising, it all
yeah,
ties together like, whoa,
yeah,
wow. And then you start to look at timelines and you start to go, wait a minute, where is the pendulum swinging now? Where are
yeah,
we on the seesaw? And so
exactly.
and
And
that's a
and
wake up for all of us, you
and
know?
another thing that I visited in Dublin was the castle, which was another
Mm.
case in point of where the the English went over and the castle was their HQ, and and basically they administered the area through the castle, and it was basically a very opulent place, as you saw from the or see from the pictures that I've sent over.
Mm.
And it's like these houses behind me.
Mhm.
This was a fantastic museum. It's 14 Henrietta Street, and as you can see, one of the if I get
Mhm.
I don't know which way to point. Oh yeah, this house here, right? You can see that it's 4 stories, so it's got 4 floors
Mhm.
and also a cellar. So you've got
Oh,
5 floors of a house. Now, when that was built in the 1720s, 1730s, there was only one family living there with servants, etc. So that was a really, really posh house. But by 1911, there were 100 people living in the same house.
wow.
But it was a slum because it had all been divided up into little tiny rooms and into little flats. So instead of having one posh family living there, there were 100 people
That's
who lived
wild.
in the same space. And that again brings it home to you that, you know, there's standards, isn't there? You've got the rich and the poor. And, you know, it's still the same. It's still the same. But
Mhm.
you need to go there
To
to
get it.
to to smell it, to see it,
I
you
really
know?
don't wanna smell 100 people in one place.
No, oh, no, they haven't got the smell, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know. That it's tactile. It makes it very real, and that's the thing. That it shows how fast things can fall down. Opulence and greed can crash. It's kind
Very
of
much
like a
so.
sugar spike,
Yeah,
right? You eat your candy, candy, candy. I know
yeah,
this because I ate too much candy trying to drive, and then all of a sudden I go, boom, what happened?
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
so it's kind of this yeah, it's kinda greed does some crazy things, and I
It
think
does.
it ends to that power and greed. Sometimes it's not about the financial side. Greed can
No, it
be
it
power.
is yeah, it is being in charge,
Mhm.
whether it's money or whether it's power. But, it is all there for us to see. All we need to do is just learn from what happened in the past, and we can see what's gonna happen in the future.
Well,
We
my
can
gosh, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to ask you, did you just to lighten the load here of this conversation, did you find any good cheese scones in Dublin? Uh,
they didn't do
oh,
cheese
man.
scones. They did not do cheese scones in Dublin. They didn't. No.
Oh,
And
so that's a England.
same in Glasgow. Glasgow didn't have any cheese scones either.
Oh,
That's what it is. I will just tell you about the bridge that's
yeah,
behind
yeah.
you. It's a
Oh, it's
lovely
beautiful.
little bridge. It's a little pedestrian bridge, and
Halfpenny.
it's called
Halfpenny?
the Halfpenny Bridge.
Halfpenny. Oh, not
Halfpenny,
halfpenny.
yeah. That's called the Halfpenny Bridge, because it used to cost you a halfpenny in a toll to cross the river on that bridge, which was a half penny. Only in England
Ah,
and Ireland, we call it a halfpenny. So it used to cost you a half penny to go across the bridge. But obviously, that saved you walking about a mile up the road to get the other bridge.
now were there little billy goats under the bridge?
And no, there's no billy goats. No, just
But
the
this the
halfpenny.
what river was this? Because you were able
That's
to
the
walk
Liffey,
along
the
oh,
Liffey.
the Liffey. I
Yeah,
didn't wanna
and
pronounce anything anymore now.
the lovely thing about that is that it's got a walkway either side of the river, and it's lined. with, as you can see, it's lined with trees and
Mm,
shops and houses. So you
mhm.
can walk down the river one side and you can walk back the river the other side. And you know, you've got things to look at, both the river and the shops and the houses and things. So it's just a lovely city. It
Oh,
really is.
with some history, and I think though, from your article, I would say that if you have Irish, ancestry, this would be a good place
Oh yeah,
to visit.
definitely, definitely.
Mm, yeah.
And also, if you like Guinness,
Yeah, there you go. And but you also end up in a pub at night and listening to
oh,
live music. So they may not have scones, but they do have good music.
oh, they do, yeah, that was fantastic. I have sent you 3 of the
Mm,
songs or 3, of the bits that I videoed while I was in there, and it's just lovely. Irish music is so different to a lot of other, it's very folky,
mhm.
and
Love it.
there was a trio was on, and they were just singing lovely songs. Some of them we knew, some of them we didn't, but it was just lovely to get soak up that atmosphere, you know, which
Yeah.
you go to places because you wanna go to a place and taste and feel and smell
Mhm.
and you know, just join in with what it is, and that is what we did when we were there. We went to the pub a couple of nights and, that was just lovely, just foot tapping, as we say.
Well, but also that music, folk music, I'm really into that because
Yeah,
and it doesn't mean just, the traditional, there's folk music, but I mean like roots music. So
yeah.
it's music that comes from, times of people, and a lot of times it was music that saved the soul. And it does. Music does save the soul, I believe that, and, it was what got you through really difficult times, and those songs are part of like, they're living museums to me,
Well, they
songs.
tell
They
a
tell the
story, don't they?
stories. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That is
We
what
did
a lot
well
of
there.
them. Yeah, a lot of these folk songs are a story, you know,
Mhm.
and that's what it's all about. That is the way that a lot of people who obviously couldn't read and write,
Mm.
that is the way they handed stories down, is
Mhm.
in a song. And you would often find that a song has got roots that go back generations
Yeah.
because that's the way that they kept the stories going.
I love it. Now, did you have any cockles and mussels? Alive, alive-o?
Alive, alive, oh, no, I didn't. No,
Ah.
I had some salmon, but I didn't have any cockles or mussels. And
Ah.
the funny thing is about the statue of Molly Malone, um, it it's a typical statue of a young lady, with quite a low cut dress. And
Oh.
and the the thing that has happened, a lot of people have been and they've touched certain parts of the
Oh,
statue,
dear.
and the, 2 parts of the statue are quite well, shiny.
Worn. Oh. Oh, well, alive, alive-o.
Alive, alive, definitely.
Well, on that note, well, she is sweet Molly Malone,
She is.
and what was she doing wheeling her wheelbarrow up down the streets? Maybe it
She
was
was
cockles
they
and
did,
mussels, but
yeah.
you never know.
Well,
That could have been a front, you know?
they do say that she sold cockles and mussels during the day, but at
And
night she had another trade.
that's what I was saying. That's why the little bit of a lower cut
Yeah,
dress, huh? Oh,
could be.
well, she was alive, alive. Oh, well, you got to do what you got to do. You know,
Yeah,
uh, listen, a lot of madams do good in history. In Silver City, New Mexico is a great example. See Detour. But they had a madam, and Madam Millie is her name. And
right.
she is the one who put money in to help save people during a flood of the downtown and helped an irrigation ditch go in, which they call the
Yeah,
Big Ditch now, which was actually put together by a woman, some women's history here. And she was the one who did scholarships for young women. And so she may have run her operation, but she put more money into that town than most people did at that time frame.
yeah.
And so I'm just saying she was a good businesswoman, but maybe not the business everybody agrees that is a good business. Let's put it that way. Most criminals are excellent business people, but
They have to be.
they're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. There you
but
go. What can we
yeah,
say?
well, next month, everyone, we'll be talking about rebel rousers, and so stay
We
tuned
will.
for that. Rebels of England, or I don't know, Glenn may go into Scotland. We never know what's going to happen there. But thank you, Glenn. Always fun having you on the show, and we always get to family history, which we love. But if you go to England, Scotland, or Wales, or hey, Dublin, I'm going to get it all messed up. Call Glenn. Go to norfolk-tours.co.uk. Keep up with them there. And his article, again, is linked in the episode notes. So check it out. Thank you so much, Glenn. Always fun.
Yeah, always, and we always do sort of veer off a little way, don't we? But we come
Well,
back.
that's just to prove that we're not artificial intelligence.
No,
This is Glenn and Lisa intelligence.
exactly. We can talk about anything.
We're real people.
See you later.